I'd like to welcome you to the Medical Center Hour. I'm Marcia Day-Childress from the Center for Biomedical Ethics and Humanities here in the School of Medicine, and welcome to all of you this afternoon. Last winter, just after Medical Center Hour, featured a talk about the great Renaissance anatomist Andreas Vesalius and the genesis of his magnificent 1543 De Humani Corporis Fabrica anatomical atlas. We were poised to have a complimentary presentation by 21st century anatomical illustrator Danny Quirk. But a major northeast blizzard canceled flights and stopped all trains. It kept Mr. Quirk at home in Massachusetts and left us without a program. Happily, we were able to reschedule Mr. Quirk. He's here with us today, paintbrush in hand, sort of, to show us what his particular brand of anatomical illustration is all about. Simply put, Danny Quirk uses the living body to teach the body. As opposed to dissecting a human cadaver to reveal the body's intricate and complex architecture, he draws on living subjects, meticulously representing on the body's surface the anatomical structures that lie and move, flex, relax, and stabilize beneath. In traditional medical education through the 19th century, human anatomy was taught by a professor who, in the anatomical theater, often sat apart from the body and read aloud to his students about the bodily structures being dissected. The dissection itself was led by not the professor, but by another skilled individual called the demonstrator. Our title today, Dissecting with a Paintbrush, Demonstrating Not So Gross Anatomy, plays a bit with this traditional terminology. For as you see, Danny Quirk is a latter-day anatomical demonstrator. During this hour, he'll demonstrate his immense knowledge of the body and its astonishing and beautiful inner workings. Perhaps we'll understand the body, even our own bodies, in new ways after this. You'll find a brief bio sketch of Danny Quirk in your handout. Assisting him today is UVA undergraduate student Mardine Karim, whom we thank deeply for her sense of adventure and willingness to be a living canvas, for her patience. This painting's been going on for several hours now, and her ability to hold still. We also thank the History of the Health Sciences lecture series, which is our partner in this presentation. In his presentation, Mr. Quirk will make mention of a seminar, Immaculate Dissection, for which he serves as the working artist, and thus in which he has a financial interest. Ms. Karim has no financial interests to declare. So without further ado, Danny Quirk and Dissecting with a Paintbrush. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for, actually, can you guys hear okay?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, okay. So thanks for actually coming out and checking the work out and whatnot. Today I want to do a little talk about the anatomical work that I do, but also too as to how it kind of came to be. I guess like all things worth noting, it kind of happened by accident. So never in a million years would I think that I'd be in this position right now, giving a talk, giving a lecture based off body painting, but too. So gonna talk a little bit as to how kind of got to that point, how the work evolved over time, and how it's being used and practiced in a new medium right now. Oops, went the wrong way. So yeah, so just kind of to start things off, just a quick little in-action piece depicting some of the deep intrinsics of the back. This is kind of like little, I guess, go-to image per se, but just kind of showing some of the detail like that can be kind of created from the pieces. Piece ended up taking about 13 hours from start to finish to complete. So it was a long day, but yeah. So to start things off and whatnot. Oops. Sorry. Technical difficulties. Okay. So to start things off, prior to doing anything anatomical and whatnot, I was more of a classically trained artist, working entirely in watercolor on paper. So worked in a very hyper-realistic style, oftentimes doing portraits, oftentimes doing just getting personality on paper, I guess. So this piece here being an example, it's a portrait of a friend of mine from back home. But watercolor painting there. And just she always had this very kind of like modesty about her, so kind of always wanted to capture that in there. But I had a lot of fun getting lost in the detail and the texture, some of the frays in the jacket, and just that rendering, being able to manipulate that paper to look like what it's actually supposed to be representing. So in addition to the kind of portrait and whatnot, I always did a lot of very technical work as well. Come from a fairly Irish background, so I've always taken a penchant towards the Celtic knotwork. So the knotwork contained the immense amount of intricacy, the highly detailed and whatnot, and which is always a fun challenge to try to make and create. So this one right here is actually all one continuous line. So if you just start up in one corner so anywhere, about an hour later you'll end up in that same spot. So, but what was really fun about the Celtic work too is that on a subconscious level, got your eyes to move around the entire piece. So another major part of making functioning work. So in addition to these as well, another style of work that used to work in quite a bit was trompe-l'oeil. So example of which being here. This is actually all just a colored pencil mark. So this is all a flat piece of paper, and then everything was kind of manipulated and done there. But yeah, so kind of a detail that went on in there. But with the trompe-l'oeil, what was the major point of it was the origins and meaning of the term is to fool the eye, to trick the eye. So you paint with a distinguished light source, distinguished reflected light, so on and so forth, to make the viewer think that what they're viewing is actually real. So the whitest whites would be the whites of the paper, the subtle kind of shading shit all builds up to really manipulate that paper to make it look like it's coming off and whatnot. So all these might sound like renderings and ramblings at the moment right now, but they all tie in together come the end. So this was actually a picture right here from high school time frame. This is actually my senior thesis in high school. We were doing a AP art class. And this was really one of the first notions where I really started getting an interest in the body. Prior to I'd been doing these trompe-l'oeil works, these other kind of themed works. And granted, the ones that were shown work from high school, but there were ones that were kind of done in that same fashion and whatnot. But anyways, so this series right here was relating life to the body. So I've been taking anatomy physiology in high school, and the notebook shows well, actually backtrack. The textbook shows the anatomy of the said region. The textbook or the notebook shows the physiology, and then the background was a collage from everyday life to relate life to the everyday body, or to relate the body to everyday life. So this particular piece right here was on the muscular system, and muscular system transportation and movement. So had like a map of kind of trade routes in the background, license, so on and so forth. But it was in doing up this series and whatnot, it really got me to appreciate that beauty and that intricacy that makes up the body. So in addition to these, do a lot of military works as well. So this is an active and ongoing body of work that I've been working on, and a lot of it's kind of I'm a fairly quiet, soft-spoken person. So these are kind of a way of kind of letting that voice out per se. The vast majority are kind of more, I guess, protest pieces or kind of things that are going against the wars. But again, kind of back to that portraiture, back to that rendering piece right here being watercolor as well. Just kind of a detail there as well. And to kind of give it a sense of scale, that face is about 3/4 the size of a quarter. So it's a very small piece, very detailed when you get it up close. So with a lot of these pieces too, focus a lot on the emotional side of things. Obviously, a lot of people can render, a lot of people can create, but to really kind of make art that gets people kind of like reacting and whatnot. The work's often been referred to, especially these military series, as Rockwell's darker brother. Just because whereas he painted the happy sides of life and whatnot, kind of focusing on these really dark sides of war and whatnot. And all these paintings were based off interviews from troops, from soldiers and Marines who I'd spoken to, and just kind of trying to paint their point of view. So a recent one I went out kind of in the midst of making art to get people talking and to get people kind of feeling. This was a piece that was made up for veteran suicides, and on average there's roughly 22 suicides per day. So this piece had been made to playing off the notion of every time a vet commits suicide, America loses a part of itself. So the flag was actually shot 22 times, creating 22 holes that were irreversible, lost, no longer to come back and whatnot, and kind of playing off that notion. Ended up getting a lot of people talking, ended up getting a lot of people kind of understanding the cause, I guess. So in that sense, you know, it ended up working out pretty nice. Then just this will be the last of the leading up to pieces, I guess. You know, a piece depicting PTSD, again, watercolor here. This piece took almost 200 hours to finish from start to finish. So just tons and tons of time, tons and tons of energy, but in the end, you know, a lot of people could relate to it, so I was happy about that much. So these were kind of some series I was working on throughout the college years, like still not really dabbling too much into the anatomical work or into anything medical based. So my senior year in school, we had to come together with senior projects. So one of my senior projects was this military body of work, and then the next was going to be just we had to come up with some other kind of idea. So being an avid fan of puns and wordplay and whatnot, was putting together a series of just these really, just like grown, I guess grown is the best way to describe it, paintings. And they were just that, they were like a quick laugh, that was about it. But there wasn't any real merit to it. So another example, I guess a little more fitting to here, would be it's just painfully corny and whatever else. But you know, everyone in the class kind of chuckled. They all thought they were amusing. But my teacher, who I had for that class, you guys might actually recognize some of his work. He's pretty much a rock star in the illustration world nowadays. He did the artwork for Hunger Games, covers Rolling Stone all the time. I joke with him, tell him that I can't go to the bathroom without seeing his artwork somewhere. So. But he was my teacher, and he gave some wonderful words of wisdom. In critiquing this work right here and whatnot, he referred to it as being the drummer for Weird Al. In that, technically it's spot on, but it's the drummer for Weird Al, so why would you want to do that? So my homework assignment was to create the coolest picture ever the next week. If not, I'd quote unquote fail the class. So, you know, he gave me some advice to dabble into things that struck passion, things that struck interest. So ended up going back into anatomy. At the time, I didn't really feel like I had quite enough work to put together a full body of things, but you know, a failing grade was on the line, so didn't have much room there. So this was my little sketch and whatnot for kind of the concept sketch. Thought this whole notion of I mean, it was college years and whatnot, changed a lot throughout college from like freshman year to senior year. So I wanted to kind of put together like this like pseudo-psychological body of work where each subject is kind of discovering themselves, but you know, through anatomy and whatever else, like understanding, like learning about themselves, understanding themselves, so on and so forth. So I came up with this sketch here. Thought it was pretty cool, but he felt that it could be better. So I'd been stumbling upon some artists who found it to be interesting, and stumbled upon this book. Many of you guys may have seen it or so, but it's Atlas of Anatomy and Surgery by Jean-Baptiste Marc Bowery, and the illustrator was Nicholas Henry Jacob, who is this phenomenal painter. He was a student of Jacques Louis David. So needless to say, he really merged that whole art and science together, just creating these beautiful, beautiful pieces. So upon seeing this, I was like, must incorporate this into work somehow. So feeling pumped and motivated, that next week I came into class with these two pieces right here. And this was the start of the series and whatnot. So this really launched the interest in the medical work and the anatomical pieces. So at the time, I'm still working on paper, still working on watercolor. These were just kind of some pieces that were made in that sense. So kind of detail and dabble in the process as to how pieces are made and whatnot. Obviously, you know, because I can't quite cut people up and shoot them for pictures. Turn to good old Photoshop and just build my reference from there. So I'll take an image from a textbook, impose it to how it need be. Digitally, I'll paint the light source so that the light source in the reference matches the actual photographed person. and then from there I'll make a painting. So this ended up being the finished painting of that one. You can kind of see some detail and whatnot. But it was just a really fun, exciting way of kind of learning anatomy, but at the same time creating artwork. So kind of continuing on with the series for a bit, ended up making about 15 or so pieces of this particular series. And they turned out to be a fairly decent hit. Turned a lot of heads. I got a lot of business cards for therapists and in the process as well. But once people actually spoke to me, they realized it was no harm. So ended up working out okay there. But it just kind of cracked me up how people reacted to it. So when I was doing these pieces, this piece being an example here, with the stretching of the skin, I was finding myself having some real issues trying to find reference for peeling skin for that and whatnot. So I got this stuff. It was liquid latex, and you know, got this flesh tone color. Figured maybe it could work and whatnot. So ended up working out beautifully for making reference. So started kind of incorporating would paint the latex onto the skin where need be, and then from there, you know, peel it off. The model would hold their given pose, photograph to the length that I needed. I had believable reference of tugging on the skin, of an actual look of skin being opened and whatnot, and then from there back to the Photoshop, add the anatomy in there, make the painting, make the reference, and then you have the finished picture from there. So pictures kind of as kind of said beforehand, kind of started getting some reception, kind of had some shows, probably in the New York area. So it was kind of fun creating work that was getting seen on a being recognized among the arts and whatnot. So one of the people who saw the work was a doctor based out of New York, Dr. Frank Scally, and he actually discovered a new structure deep in the cervical spine and whatnot. So it was found within the suboccipital triangle, and he was an artist himself. This is actually an image that he had made depicting the region of the suboccipital triangle. But he was looking for an artist, someone who really could kind of emulate that excitement that he was feeling when he found that structure, and something that would really just make people just really want to know on the work and whatnot. So he gave me a call and he asked me to remake his picture there for a publication, and this actually ended up being the remake that I did alongside with him. So the piece here kind of shows where the structure is located. It's a very, very small structure. It's still just kind of give you guys a briefing on as to how it works and whatnot. It's a small structure. There's still really not too much known about it, but it has attachments to the rectus capitis major, the obliquus capitis inferior, and then attaches to the dura mater and the spinal cord. And they're just still trying to figure out the exact reasons and notions for it. But it was still exciting to say that he'd found something new and got to illustrate it. So this is kind of the section kind of just dissected out and whatnot. So part of making the illustrations, the medical illustrations whatnot, was just to kind of clear and make fairly complex things a little bit more simple to read and understand. Everything here has been kind of removed and whatnot, so these muscles aren't actually attached to the skull, so they look a little bit like flayed bacon at the moment. But some illustrations that I made up for his paper were kind of like so. The bridge being what's attaching to those rectus capitis major and obliquus capitis inferior there to that dura. Has like that almost like spider web kind of look to it. But so these are some illustrations I made up for him, and kind of as per usual among the arts realm, we don't usually get paid for our work too much. So I mean, I was more than happy to make these things. It was a really awesome foot in the door. Got some cadaver experience. Got some ability to actually get some work published. These ended up getting published in Clinical Anatomy, Spine, and then the Annals of Anatomy as well. So it was pretty exciting to have some stuff published in real journals, I guess. So it ended up helping out there. But the point of this rant, I guess, is because we don't usually get paid for whatever else, and we're always fed that line of, well, it'll look good on your resume, decided to actually make it into my resume. So the because I mean, I hadn't done a real program or anything at this point in time, a lot of times like the resume that's supposed to get you work and whatnot is the biggest enemy for artists, because what you're trying to show off is your work, you're trying to show off what you're making, but when it's reduced to a simple black and white, a lot of what you can bring to the table is just completely lost. So I figured seeing us doing medical work, that would be kind of fun to play off a textbook kind of setting. So I'll just quick pass, kind of slide through these and whatnot. but kind of the whole point right in there. So there's one page for each of the sections, you know, a figure for each of the parts and whatnot, and then yeah, the physiology is the numbers and so on and so forth. But it was just a fun excuse to kind of do something a little bit more creative and think outside the box. So while all this was kind of going on and whatnot, this would have been around, actually around almost this exact time, about 3 years ago. And just moved in with a girlfriend at the time, and Halloween was approaching. And she was having an AP final that day. So she thought it'd be kind of fun for the class and whatnot to get painted up. So back to that latex paint that I was using beforehand. I didn't have any paints in possession to actually, like any face paint or anything to actually go on the skin. I knew that acrylic paint by itself would just peel and flake off the skin. So that latex base that was used for reference, I knew that latex would stick to latex, and there's latex in the acrylic paint. So I had a little theory that maybe the acrylic paint could stick to the latex, and then therefore I could actually paint on the skin and not have things flake off. So this ended up being the result and whatnot. This was the first ever of the body paintings, and it really got people excited about things. So we were. So we ended up, we ended up going out for Halloween that evening and whatnot, and she had, her face painted up. I did up my arm and whatnot, and we had matching costumes, all that jazz. But it was really cool because the picture went viral instantly. Within about, the picture was finished up around 5, around 8 o'clock that evening. People recognized it on the street. So it was kind of amazing in that sense. So that kind of made a light kind of go off, like, ooh, maybe we should like practice more of these. Obviously this is done in more of a visual kind of way, but there was certainly some potential in there. So I was going to kind of quick fast forward kind of through these. But the cool thing about doing the painting on the latex is the picture actually peels off afterwards. So after our night of out and about, it just peel off. You don't have to worry about washing things or scrubbing things off or anything like that. So picture ended up making some rounds. At this time, I was used to maybe like 10 people seeing things. This was a huge international audience of people who saw the work. And a lot of people took massive advantage of there not being a watermark or any kind of thing that identified it to me. So there were a lot of people, including Senior Cafu Body Paint, who made this awesome image too. So everyone was calling it their own, slapping their watermarks on it, doing all this kind of stuff. So I ended up teaching a pretty nasty lesson there. So as the kind of seeing some potential in these and whatnot, kind of making a few more. Ended up making this one on Cheryl as well, same model as beforehand. Trying to kind of delve into some deeper structures and whatnot, really kind of playing off the lighting, so on and so forth. So these pieces, as you can see, they aren't they're more tattoo-like versus educational per se. And the anatomy is freaking butched in this thing. Like it's pretty terrible in terms of accuracy levels and whatnot, because it was still learning a lot of stuff at this point in time. So so it's kind of continuing on some more of them, kind of playing around, practicing, kind of doing some new pieces and whatnot. And again, as you can see, it still has that very kind of ripped, torn, tattered kind of aesthetic. But it's still making for some kind of interesting images. Getting people kind of excited as to what's going on underneath the skin, and so on and so forth. So I'm just gonna skip through a few of these. So we have these ones going, has more of that artistic kind of look to it. Not really terribly scientific yet, but the process that's kind of going into them is just kind of illustrate for you guys and whatnot. Start off with a latex base, like flat tone latex base. And at this point in time, I'm a little bit more familiar with anatomy, a little bit more familiar with the structures and whatnot. So we'll have and as kind of did on Margine here and whatnot, we have the model do a series of movements, series of palpations to make the individual muscles pop. Build up kind of the structures from there. Do a basic flat tone of color. So as you can see, it's nothing really terribly spectacular at the moment. It's still very, very flat, very, very bland. Come in with just like basic round of striations with marker, basic rounds of just outlining things, sharpening things, kind of refining things. From there, coming with some more highlights and whatnot, starting to give some dimension, starting to push away from that mid-tone. Coming in with some more structures and whatnot. Here, a piece is about done. It's about done, but it's not being photographed properly. So back to that whole notion of the trompe l'oeil in the very beginning, where making the where it's that basically creating an image that fools the eye. Whenever I paint the pictures and whatnot, the light source that's in the painting, I'll photograph the model in the same light source as was in the painting, so that when the image is deduced to a flat image, those work together. So, oops. So here we have the proper light source and whatnot, and you can really see that the shadows, like the shadows in the zygomatic muscles and whatnot, really fall into like the masseter and whatnot, like really makes that nice furrow in where the buccinator would be, and you really start to see that believable look of like, oh, the skin has actually been taken off and whatnot. So upon kind of playing around with these and whatnot, this is when I was like, oh, this could actually be really kind of cool for some actual illustrations. So as you can see, it peels off there, but yeah, so. Doing up a piece, laminectomy piece and whatnot. Another really long, laborious one. And I'm just going to kind of, some next year, so time starting to get a little closer to the edge. So I'm going to kind of jump through a few more of these. But yeah, no, so this one, kind of similar to what those other ones were beforehand, where they're the body paintings, but there's no more tattered torn edge. There's actually the look of the adipose has been cut. There's the actual look of how the skin has been removed, and these are the structures that are underneath. So this ended up being the finish of that piece and whatnot. It had some nice lighting, had some nice coloring to it. But then what I tried doing with this one versus other was actually labeling it and giving it this actual textbook kind of look to it. And this is kind of when doors kind of started opening a little bit for potential works. I mean, doing this on paper, this would easily take about 60 to 100 hours, like doing this level of detail, this level of figure, this level of whatever else. And ended up cranking out the entire thing in about 10 hours. So some more kind of pieces kind of playing off this notion here. And then just, kind of one piece showing off the thoracolumbar fascia, doing a little bit of mixing and merging of hand-based work with the body painting and whatnot, and proved to yield some pretty fun outcomes. So this work was definitely starting to pick up, starting to make some rounds among the medical communities and whatnot. And the work actually caught the attention of a doctor based out of New York as well, and was hired to do some work for her. And instead of taking a traditional cash payment and whatnot, decided to trade artwork for classes. So we ended up taking gross anatomy as a result of that, and that really kind of got me some real cadaver experience, some real dissecting experience. And because I was taking the class for credit versus for a grade, the teacher thought it would be kind of cool to paint on a student the structures that we were going to be dissecting in class, so that we could cross-reference that on a painting, compare it to the cadaver, cross-reference with the textbook, and the student just reacted beautifully to it. So another piece that was made in the class there. So this one here being about 3 hours from start to finish, whereas that piece that had been made up for Frankie prior to was about 35 hours. So huge time difference, and in essence, it's I mean, granted this one's a little bit stronger and whatnot, but for the amount of time that was saved, totally worth it. So I've been kind of experimenting, kind of playing around with a few other kind of notions of things too, with kind of like Sharpie marker, watercolors, so on and so forth. Okay. So in kind of in this between time and whatnot, between some of the classes and actually doing stuff with whatever, just kind of playing around with some more kind of conceptual means of the painting. So here we have a heart within a heart, kind of playing off that look and whatnot. And this is actually a couple who was painted up, and they had matching Valentine's Day outfits. So it actually worked out kind of cool. But so in the midst of kind of doing some of these things and having these kind of like cutouts in these different shapes and whatnot, thought it'd be kind of interesting to try to use anatomy as kind of a piece message. When we were in lab and when we were kind of doing those sections and whatnot, I thought it was kind of interesting how you see, I guess, kind of tying back to the war pieces and back to these senseless losses of life and whatnot. It kind of always cracked me up. I shouldn't say, well, not really cracked up, but always the notion how people would fight over race, religion, politics. The religion and the politics are basically lost once that person had died and whatnot. So you're kind of like left with race there. But then as soon as the skin comes off in the lab, you're basically you're left with an element of body. So I started doing up these series of these people who've kind of been at war with each other, and showing. So in this case, gay versus straight and whatnot, kind of showing that underneath it all, we're the same in essence. So as time was kind of going on, I was doing up a few more. Kind of back to a few more kind of experimenting with other means of doing things. This guy was kind of awesome. He let me shave off a portion of his head and shave a portion of his beard to really get a cool end product there. Kind of similar there going in there. But yeah, so the work started catching some real names and whatnot, and Smithsonian did a feature not too long after that. And it was really kind of bringing a pretty decent question of should the body painting be used in the classroom setting, because we had nothing but beautiful reactions to it in the classroom. Students reacted like wonderfully to it, and what was really great about it was it made learning interactive. It made people it made like a very dense, very difficult to grasp subject matter more tangible, more exciting. And when students kind of saw the painting and whatnot, it became creative. It became less about repetition, less about memorizing things, and became more of a process and whatnot. So there's been a couple of schools that are actually incorporating the body painting into their curriculum now, and it's proving a world of wonders. Recently had been out in University of Edinburgh doing up almost similar to this one, but was actually working with the students, painting up some students as well. And they had incorporated some body painting into their curriculum for the surgical students. And they found that on average, these students' grades had increased from the time when the painting was implemented versus when it wasn't. Grades went up anywhere from about one grade to up to a full letter grade from when that had started. And they all attributed to just being able to just reiterate things that the book was teaching in a flat dimension onto that third dimension of the skin, that third dimension of the body. And it was pretty awesome to see. So some more exposure in the work there, used in some TED Talks as kind of like new innovative ways of teaching anatomy. So it was definitely kind of cool to kind of sit back and reflect and see how this kind of like stumbled upon by accident and turned out to be kind of like a gold mine for like a new way of getting people excited about work. So this kind of all spawns to what doing with the work right now. And based off the success that we had in that gross anatomy class, that same teacher, Kathy Dooley, seeing how the students reacted in her classroom, just thought it'd be kind of cool to try to base a seminar series off of that. So what we're actually doing right now is we're teaching the body through body painting. So through a series of correctives, through a series of palpations, through a series of understanding the body with body painted visuals to cross-reference and work with and whatnot. It's people are getting quite excited about it. And it's we're kind of pitching it as that anatomy class that you never had, and it's people they just get so excited, and because it's predominantly based for physical therapy, for movement therapy, for massage therapy, so on and so forth. It's pretty great in terms of the paintings. You can actually see the muscles move on the body. You can see the structures move. So that adds a dimension that the cadaver certainly couldn't quite do in that sense. So some of the work that's kind of going on there now that I've been kind of practicing, kind of tweaking stuff, the level of work from the beginning up to the level of work right now is just it's almost like two completely different artists, and having that better structure, having that better understanding of the anatomy of how it works and whatnot can yield these much better and stronger pieces. So typically speaking, we'll paint it the night beforehand for that next day. And sometimes we'll spend upwards of 20 hours painting for the seminar that's coming up next. And it ended up being pretty beat come the end of the day. But here's kind of some examples of some of the stuff that's kind of seen. And then in the actual seminar itself, we'll have the painted models. Kathy will teach the anatomy. She'll teach a series of palpations, series of how to find the origin insertions of the said muscles. They'll have that painting to cross-reference it by. And again, on the model, they can lie back, they can find those points of insertions, find those origin insertions, and just have that visual right there in front of them versus having to visualize it and whatnot. So yeah. But so that kind of just some more work that was kind of done up and created for them, and just to kind of show how the work is, I guess, kind of further evolved and whatnot with being used as kind of a teaching tool and whatnot. This would be kind of a piece that would be made and painted up in the studio, showing off the diaphragm, psoas, some of the iliopsoas, so on and so forth, transverse abdominis, and how these muscles of the core kind of come together. In Photoshop, you can clean all that excess skin that you don't necessarily need, and then you have this pretty interesting kind of painted piece and whatnot. And then from there, in the actual manual and whatnot, we'll have everything labeled, everything marked, crossed alongside a clean schematic of kind of ideal scenarios. But they'll be able to see everything on a real body, real setting, real time, and just see that presented in a new and different way. So then, she just wanted to show this one to you, as to just kind of give an example as to how the work moves when painted. So actually, I'm not sure how to make this actually work now. Maybe this one. You're good to go. Okay. So you can see how that painting really just comes to life when so apologies for my excitement there. But yeah, no, but so when we have things like this in the setting and whatnot, the students just react beautifully to really be able to see that what's in essence a flat stale image in a textbook, or like massive meat in the lab and whatnot. You can really see how that moves, how that works and whatnot, and how it kind of falls on that person. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the talk there as of right now. What is it? Ended up doing up some painting today and whatnot that I kind of want to share with you guys. So, was that? Oh yeah, actually, yeah, if you have the lights on, that can actually work out pretty well. And actually, Regine, if you want to hop up here real quick. So yeah, so ended up painting up this piece of the flexor compartment on the forearm and whatnot. So you can see it's kind of some of the muscles here. You have the one that everyone knows here, the biceps. Then you have the pronator teres, the flexor carpi radialis, the palmaris longus, and then a tiny little wee bit of the flexor carpi ulnaris in there. And actually, Regine, if you just kind of one of those up or so, you can kind of see it's not quite as much in this one here. But it's not quite as prominent as how it was in that gastroc kind of calf flex and whatnot. But even as you kind of flex there, you can kind of see the belly's kind of bulge of the areas where everything would be. But yeah, so there were some of the structures on there, and I actually did up a piece of myself as well. And as in where the you have these paintings, and in the midst of creating and making new work, and always trying to outdo what was done beforehand and whatnot, found a way to actually dissect with paints. So
you may want to walk out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So have a little something up here, and these would actually be the muscles that would be just deep to what's in Mardine's piece. So whereas she has the superficial most. So whereas she has the superficial most flexors and whatnot. The ones that I have painted here are just deep. The overlap would be the pronator teres right here, which kind of going right there. But these bellies right here, like these ends that are going in there, it's actually this muscle right here, which is the Flexor Digitorum Superficialis. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to remove the Flexor Digitorum Profundus and then the pronator teres and show you guys the muscles that are deep set. And then, so that actually got a little gross. I was hoping that still would have survived, but it didn't. But yeah, so then deep to that, you have the, how does it now? You have the Flexor Digitorum Profundus, and then the Flexor Pollicus longus, a little bit of the supinator muscle, which basically will help to rotate it'll help in supination as will the bicep there, or which will help in pronation here. And then deep to that you have the perimeter audience, which is done there. So, but yeah, so.
So thank you so much, and amazing images. We have quite a bit of time for discussion. Are there questions you're eager to ask? Either the artist or the monk. We've learned a bit about how this all came about and how this work is done, but I think they're both willing to talk about the process a bit more. So when you ask a question or offer a comment, please identify yourself as well. We have a couple of mics that we'll bring to you.
I'll actually go ahead and ask one. I'm Colleen Surratt, a fourth year undergrad. And I am wondering, you mentioned that doing the painting on paper took, well, for one of them took like 60 hours, but doing it on the body takes a lot fewer.
Yep.
Why is that?
Well, a lot of what's going on with the paper is you have a flat piece of white paper. And you're manipulating that paper to have shape and to have form. So in essence, I'm just painting something on something that already has shape and already has form. So all of those levels of shading that would take a good couple of hours to build that shape, to build that mass, is already there on the form and on the structure. So in essence, I'm just kind of painting highlights, painting darks, making things kind of match up and whatnot. And then as the model would flex, or the person who was painted would flex, that would further make the muscles work, make the muscles move. So in essence, you could all these illustrations, all these pieces out of like that couple hours devoted into a body painting, versus having to make multiple photos out of I can make multiple paintings on paper or whatnot. But the vast majority of it comes down to that. It comes down to that notion of taking something that's completely flat and then making it look 3D. So if that makes sense at all. Okay, cool.
Any question?
Hello, my name's Neil McKinney. I just have kind of a marketing idea. We're really close to Halloween. Have you ever thought of turning these into like decals? And then
We're actually playing around with those right now. That's my homework for getting back from here, is to actually put some links up online. But going to be having up some facial pieces, kind of comparable to that one that you saw on Cheryl there, and then a series of maybe just like a few kind of like forearm flexor pieces, so on and so forth. Just things that are easy to use, easy to put down, things that look kind of interesting, and and go from there.
Good.
So yeah, but don't worry, totally hadn't planned on that much. So, and for the Halloween aspect, that would definitely be much better. Like whereas the decals would be much harder to work in a seminar setting, where you're trying to see those structures move underneath. Because part of how the pictures are made in the actual painting is doing a series of palpations, so it matches perfectly to that individual. Whereas if we were to make these ready-made decals, these ready-made tattoos and whatnot, they may not fit or match perfectly. So if you're trying to show where something's working and then a different muscle's moving on there, it could send some false information out there. So.
Hi, I have a comment. Excuse me.
That's okay. Go ahead.
I don't know if anyone else has been on the New York City subway on Halloween, but I think you give new meaning to the subway with these decals. Also, I noticed that your signature looks a lot like Frank Netter's signature. Has anyone ever commented on that?
No, not really. That's interesting. That's I've never quite heard that before. But it's kind of funny though, on the notion of the subways there. This seminar is going international, so we've had a couple dates in Australia, like overseas and whatever else. So we'll be riding the subways out there, and we have oodles of fun peeling our stuff off in public. so we'll kind of like act like really a little hunched over or something. Everyone will kind of just like look over and say, what's going on over there? And then we'll see things like burping out parts. And then when everyone's like, what's going on? And we'll talk about the seminar, or talk about things that way. So it ends up being this kind of like shock promotion kind of thing. And it ends up working out pretty cool, so. But yeah.
So hi, Mark Hankin, I'm the anatomy thread leader for the School of Medicine.
Oh, hello.
This is stunning work. My first question is, what are you doing in January? Musculoskeletal system.
January, we actually have 4 seminars booked for then. So yeah.
Maybe we can entice you down here.
Possibly. I mean, they're only on weekends, so maybe you could like work something out in the days there. But it's really nice though in terms of like as kind of said there, like these students just reacted beautifully to it, and it's just one of those things like where it just makes this like dense material so much more interactive. And another point, this actually kind of thanks for some of you writing there, and another point that I kind of wanted to note on here and whatnot was another major point of the body painting too, which kind of proves to be a success for it, is it shows the body off as the work of art that it is. It seems like the vast majority of like portrayal of the body in the news and in the media is purely sexualized nowadays. So like nobody really appreciates those inner workings, or those underlying structures, and anybody who does, they're deemed like serial killer or like murdery or that kind of stuff, So there's like this want and desire to actually learn about the body is seen as perverse and twisted. So it's been kind of interesting by making up these paintings. Obviously, you have your vast majority of people who get creeped out and grossed out. But a lot of people are like, oh, I never really would have thought of looking at it that way. That's actually kind of cool. And then they'll things something that they weren't necessarily interested in beforehand, they'll see it in a new light from there. So,
if you don't mind a follow-up question.
Sure, absolutely.
Sort of along the marketing question raised earlier, because the fidelity of what you've done is what's so stunning, in addition to your palette and everything else. But as a medical educator and having colleagues all over the country and elsewhere in the world, we'd all want to do this.
Right.
And there's only one of you. So I just wonder if there's a way to reach out to your colleagues and, if you will, start a school. Certainly would help a lot of illustrators who need.
Absolutely, no, that's actually a really amazing idea right there. As you know, I have kind of worked alongside with some people a little bit here and there and whatnot. And I mean, for the time being, I guess in the midst of answering this in a kind of selfish way, I guess, it's something new, something that's kind of stumbled upon, something that actually is getting work. And I mean, it's kind of difficult finding work as an artist and whatnot. So for the time being, trying to keep some of the trade secrets to myself. But as the demand is increasing and whatnot, would obviously, love to be able to work alongside some more people, kind of spread the work that way. But and I mean, as I said before, like it's just this new and exciting new way of teaching anatomy and learning it. So yeah. Oh, no worries. Thank you. Those are great questions, by the way.
Hi. I'm Olivia Savick. I'm a second year in the Biomedical Sciences PhD program. I'm curious about sort of all the lenses that you have as an artist. So you have, artist as activist, artist as educator now, artist as, someone who produces something that's more fun, maybe a Halloween decal. How do you balance all these different roles that you play?
A lot of it kind of comes down to mood. It's, say if I read something in the news and it just really ticks me off, like, oh, military picture, or oh, something like that, it's something political, Another major one is deadlines and being sick of things, It's like, oh, I just pulled 12 straight letters on this. I don't ever want to paint another anatomy thing for another month, So then I'll jump into something that's more fun, But it's a lot of it. It's just very definitely balancing in that sense, though, have too much of something or too little of something, kind of go back into things that way. But at the moment now, I know that there's obviously a lot of excitement in the body painting, so that's kind of occupying the vast majority of it now. But on that note as well, it has been a little bit of a hiatus between some seminars between now and January timeframe. So sort of using this time to kind of catch up on some more personal work, some more kind of like protest pieces, so on and so forth. So that flag piece being the most recent one that was made up. So, but it always helps though too, so in the midst of doing different things that way, by creating work that gets reactions and whatnot, you kind of inadvertently find new and different ways of appealing to audiences and appealing to different people versus like kind of doing the same trick every time. So if that makes sense at all?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Sorry to bug you again. My name's Neil.
No worries.
I'm sure you're familiar with John Cody's new Et Crochet book that came out in the late 80s.
I've heard the name, but I actually haven't seen the book.
He actually had his male model starve himself so that the superficial painting could look deeper.
Oh wow!
But as far as medical, And there's a whole book. He's got like a whole book with all the structures and everything.
And he said that was John Cody?
John Cody, he was out of Kansas.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing about the education that I wanted to point out, there's a traditional technique in artist education called making an écorché, which is a flayed muscle figure.
Right.
Where you actually build from an armature
Right.
and create a skeleton and then lay on the muscles.
Right.
And that's a really cheap technique. Unfortunately, the only person that really is effective in marketing right now is Andrew Kars in Las Vegas.
Yeah, okay.
And his workshops are like $6,000 or something.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting him at an AMI conference about 2 years back, and his stuff is just beyond incredible.
Yeah.
He sculpts everything in ZBrush, so you get these like incredible detail and figures about that big. And he'll have his workshops, so we know where those are kind of alongside, and just the anatomy that's taught there is just phenomenal. So.
The great thing about that is you're getting the eye-hand coordination, the muscle memory. So you're actually building the human figure and learning the anatomy from the inside out.
Right, absolutely. So it's really been pretty exciting in that way. And like with the models who will work on too, the vast majority, try to make them people who are in some way, shape, or form med-related. So be it nursing, be it actually pre-med and whatnot. And a lot of times we'll try to when actually painting in the studio and whatnot, we'll try to make these little study groups and whatnot. So while I'm kind of painting work on my own and whatnot, everyone will be kind of benefiting from it too. So it ends up being pretty fun in that sense. So it's equally as much about aesthetics as it is about the education there too. So.
I have another question.
Oh, yeah, sure.
There's this recent literature in like ethics on this thing called incidental findings, and when researchers find something that they weren't actually looking for. So I'm wondering, have you ever been painting someone and found something wrong that you need to tell them to go to the doctor about or something?
I haven't had any of that experience at all.
No.
I mean, on that note though as well, I don't think I've put enough of medical knowledge to find things like that. I know it was actually kind of cool though that the last summer that was taught up and whatnot, I didn't even paint on this model and whatnot, but when he had very developed calves and whatnot. So as he was flexing to kind of show some of the muscles in there and whatnot, he actually had a third head in his gastroc and whatnot. So that ended kind of like serving as an anomaly that every kind of learn off and whatnot. But no, I think that would be kind of neat if you could find some kind of interesting variation there. So.
In what you would do?
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
I don't know. I feel like one thing that's actually been kind of neat about these though is people who are being painted and whatnot. They're in essence putting their body on display. So it's always kind of fun to kind of make note of subtle differences or subtle you're saying say for example you're we'll say palmaris longus for example, this tendon is very pronounced here, you have this one's very pronounced, or you'd be great to paint this for or something, so but haven't quite done the pleasure of finding something new and different.
Hi, my name is Jillian Gardner. I'm a fourth-year undergraduate. I was just wondering, do you usually try to keep the work intact when you peel it off? And how well do you find it preserves the integrity of the work and the lighting and all?
Yeah, no, that's actually a pretty awesome question there too. It depends on how much time went into the picture and how many times I've worked on the model beforehand. My payment for models, usually speaking, is pizza, beer, and painting. So after we've eaten and finished the piece and whatnot, I always give them the finished picture and whatnot. So if it's my first time working with them and whatnot, I'll take extra effort to really peel it off to make everything stay preserved. I mean, this is kind of how it comes off vast majority of times now, just because it's a lot better to work on models I've worked with beforehand. There's none of the initial awkwardness of getting to know as you're painting kind of stuff, and you can just kind of focus on the work. But but no, it actually retains pretty well come the time that it actually peels off to the time that it's actually on the skin. It just becomes a lot more flattened. Kind of back to your question there with the painting on skin versus the painting on paper. When it's on the skin, you have this wonderful tonality, these subtle shading, subtle variety, and as soon as it comes off, it's just flat tone, flat mid-tone, flat tone dark, and then flat tone highlight and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting how it kind of jumps back or how it reverts back to that, I guess. So.
I have one question.
Sure.
Last year when you were supposed to come, it was actually in January, trying to trying to be a part of the anatomy unit for the first year medical students. And it also, as I mentioned in the introduction, it followed a session on Vesalius. And so I'm kind of curious, to what extent now that you've gotten into this, do you go and look at the drawings and the work of some of the earlier masters and, what you think of that?
Well, it's always, I always find their work to be just, it's always very awe-inspiring. So especially like in Vesalius' case there too, where it's something that was, it was monumental for the time and whatnot. It denounced all these current trains of thought and whatnot, these current canons of beliefs and whatnot, through doing that like direct dissection, that direct human dissection and whatnot. So I mean, I always find appreciation in there. I mean, being a person who does more painting, the more painted images tend to get me more excited than line drawings and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I could never look at a Vesalius picture and not actually enjoy what I was seeing. So, there's always kind of a challenge there, I guess, too, like finding new ways to kind of stay motivated. And one way that always kind of works is find something that motivates you, forget about it, then find it again, and then be re-inspired. So, because I know one of the first real books that really got me interested into anatomy was actually where I got a lot of the reference from in that high school series. Had a Vesalius piece on the cover, and I just remember, like, as a kid thinking it was just the coolest thing ever. And the book was all in Italian, so I couldn't actually read a word of it or anything. But that initial image had grabbed me and whatnot, and then to totally kind of helped solidify that love with anatomy and with the body from there. So.
Could we ask Mardine a question?
Absolutely.
You mind?
Sure.
I'm just curious. You're a pre-med student, isn't that right?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't turn on.
Oh, that's okay. And I just wondered, what comments you might offer based on having spent the last 4.5 hours having your arm painted. What's your perspective on learning anatomy now?
I mean, it was a pleasure meeting Danny and doing this with him. It was.
Same to you.
I thought it was amazing. I mean, I think this is. I'm dreading taking anatomy with this, sorry, but I just don't. I don't think I can. I mean, I'll have to be able to memorize all of this and do it, but it was just. I was asking questions. It wasn't me being forced to learn. I was very much into it, and he even mentioned I had a muscle that 20% of the population doesn't have, and he was able to point it out, and he painted it, and I could move it and see that muscle, and I could see it normally when it was on my skin, but now I could see it in color and in context, and I thought it was amazing. I mean, I think it would be a great educational technique, and I would love to do it.
Well, we've come to the end of our hour, but I'd like to thank Danny Quirk and Mardine Perez